The service today is a celebration of superheroes. And probably like many of you in this room, my first introduction to superheroes was through comic books. Some of them up here I found in a box up in the attic. Superman, Batman, Supergirl, Spider-Man, and others. On TV, Wonder Woman took on the bad guys every week and to make the world a little bit safer. One overarching theme was that the superheroes had a mission. They usually had been given unique gifts or powers, and they used those gifts in the service of humanity, mostly by fighting crime, defending the weak, blowing up alien invaders, and generally setting wrongs right. However, for me, there are also other types of superheroes. The ordinary superhero. The types that we have here in our congregation who have used their unique gifts in the service of humanity. Heroes who do their work unceremoniously, unnoticed by many of us, but who make a difference in the lives of others. Making countless phone calls for marriage equality, writing regular letters to politicians, or to students who need encouragement to make it through one more week of school. Those, to me, should also count as superheroic acts. Let us light the chalice in appreciation of our heroes and heroines, remembering that any of us may become a superhero to another. As Albert Schweitzer wrote, at times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Superpowers by Evan Underbrink. A 5-year-old asked me once, if you could pick one superpower, what would you choose? His head was filled with the sounds of glorious proclamations and imaginary battles where the bad guys are killed and everybody wins. I smiled at him and told him I would be a waterbender because Katara kicks butt. He ran away gleefully to tell children he thinks are his friends about it, and I was left to ponder over the bodies of bad guys. And I realized I'd just lied to a 5-year-old. If I could choose a superpower, I would choose the power to forgive anybody. Kind of a letdown for a 5-year-old, huh? But life is full of letdowns. I was let down when I saw my Superman lift weights, yet not be able to uplift hearts, because his own was broken by a skeleton in the ground. Still I see the world is saved for another day. Except we still have gangs. Except we still have wars. And I realize the only power we all learn to master is how to turn invisible, so nobody can see our faults. And when we do so, when we turn invisible, we can't be forgiven. Nobody can see my faults because nobody can see me. So to survive, we have to be invisible. And to forgive, we have to be vulnerable. And unable to do either, I changed my mind and I picked water bending. So when this 5-year-old comes back to me, I try to tell him about Jesus and about forgiving your enemies. But he's just beginning to experience the expedience of evil. He hasn't yet tried with every muscle in his body to turn to his bullies and lay out the fact that he was hurt. And his abusers have never learned how to let go of their need for control and whisper, "I'm sorry," so that we can contort our mouths and squeeze out those simple words, "I forgive you." If that happened, maybe we could all be saved. But it doesn't, so all I can offer my 5-year-old is a hug, an ice pack, and silence. The second reading, Sheroes and Heroes, is by an unknown poet as a tribute to Winnie Mandela, South African anti-apartheid activist. Every now and again, in the march of humankind, come some human persons who cannot be confined within physical bounds, whose internal power of life defies the walls' capacities of so-called normal boundaries, whose social consciousness sprints far ahead of social being, outside of material restrictions, outside of their own very bodies, outside of the accepted of their age, way outside of the ordinary, and rockets them, despite themselves, into becoming sheroes and heroes.
In East St. Paul on West 7th Street, I was waiting at the signal to turn onto I-94. It was a sunny, blue sky afternoon there amidst the midday traffic and the trucks and the sounds of the city, not far from where we lived at the time. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see something out the window, something kind of red going along the sidewalk. First, I didn't really think anything of it. I was watching to see the traffic ahead of me when the signal would turn and when I would need to go. But it kept moving and kept seeming brighter, so I looked over and I saw a kid, mid-elementary age, in a full head-to-toe, bright red and orange and yellow Flash costume. Had a mask, couldn't see any human skin at all, completely covered. And he was just walking along by himself. And I kept kind of watching him because this was fascinating. You know, I normally didn't see the Flash just walking down the sidewalk. And so at one point he just kind of stopped, turned, looked like this, then put his hands out and ran down the hill. He was off to save the day all by himself somewhere in East St. Paul. And I was feeling a little safer knowing that he was there. Often it isn't so obvious, though, is it? Often you can't just look out your window in the middle of midday traffic on a weekday afternoon and see a superhero in bright red running along the sidewalk saving the day somewhere. Sometimes it takes a little more noticing, a little more awareness, a little more paying attention to the little glimpses of superpowers that flash and shine on everyday, ordinary streets. It's true that sometimes there are people or moments that awaken out of some mixture of circumstances of skills and possibility and social circumstance that bring to life something that is seemingly larger than life. Every now and again, writes the poet, in the march of humankind comes some human persons who cannot be confined, whose internal power defies the walls of so-called normal boundaries way outside of the ordinary, and it rockets them despite themselves into becoming sheroes and heroes. You know many of these people, these larger-than-life people, and many of these moments. You can almost begin to list them, this litany of names in our wider global culture. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Susan B. Anthony, Mother Teresa, Harriet Tubman, Harvey Milk. In part, we remember these larger-than-life names because of what they did or worked for. And it isn't that they were perfect. These are complex people with many different stories too. In part, we remember them because of what their leadership or their identity represented about the world and the work for justice or hope. And mostly, I think we remember much about them because of the grace or the grit or the love they infused into whatever they were doing. Sometimes something seemingly spectacular breaks through, and for a generation, or in our world today, for just a news cycle, some hero is born, rises up out of the ordinary lives of common, ordinary people. There are some jobs or professions that lend themselves to the occasional miraculous, saving lives in an operating room or saving relationships in therapy, making good, hard choices, hopefully for the best of the world in mind from a judicial bench, running into burning buildings. There's many jobs that save lives literally or figuratively all the time. There are many others, however, that are less likely to just stumble across something that is obviously miraculous in their daily life, something super or noticeable, at least in that way. Not long ago, I was buying groceries and I started bagging them as they continued to ring them up. And the teller kind of looked over at me and paused a little and grinning said, Thanks for begging. I was beginning to lose hope in humanity. I think not many other people had bagged their own groceries that day, and he was getting a little sick of it. And then he kept saying, I wasn't identified as clergy at all, but he seemed to confide in me and wanted to say more. The worst is when people just sit there and they point at where I need to put each item in the bags. And it's the worst thing. I was like, man, that's horrible. And simple interaction reminded me, the simple moment of laughing and talking about daily things, that it really is the little things in life, isn't it? It's the little small ordinary interactions, moments, conversations, those momentary reminders that add up over the course of a day or a week or a month or a year or a lifetime that remind us of our humanity, that remind us of our connection with each other, that there is enough kindness and humor and compassion and love that is still hanging on in this world each day. Sometimes those moments just open up a little bit and add something to save the day or make someone's day. Sometimes it even saves lives from despair, of isolation, or hopelessness. Every day there are moments and people that spring into action just at the right time, just at the right place, that remind you that this world is filled with heroes by saving and making someone's day. You know this because it happens all the time. If you can have that spidey sense and just see it appear before you. It happens every time someone in this church goes down after service, after hearing a need of someone in the congregation who's had surgery or is going through a rough time, and they stop at the podium in the lobby, which is our old pulpit, and that's filled now with cards on top. And they write out a card, and they send something just to simply wish them well. Sometimes they don't know who they are at all, but they want them to know someone, some stranger in this church, and this church as a whole, cares about them, cares about their life, cares enough that they want them to experience joy, wants them to know they're remembered, wants them to know they are beloved. Now, maybe you've seen these videos online, maybe not, maybe it's just a young parent thing that we tend to do, and so I'm in that circle and I watch these young parent videos. But there's a compilation of great videos, of different home videos that have been taken and put together when a baby or a toddler is just about to either roll off the side of the couch or fall into a little stream, any number of everyday possibilities where children could get just slightly hurt, not like deathly hurt, because that'd be terrifying to watch, but just enough so that you're a little nervous, like, what's going to happen, right? And then, miraculously, somebody always swoops in out of the ordinary, just breaks through the moment, and all of a sudden, just in the nick of time, saves them. My favorite, it seems to be in several of these videos, is when a parent is sleeping with a small child in their arms, right? Like on a couch, just taking a nap, they've fallen asleep, and their arm starts going, and the baby starts going with it. And then they wake up just in time and swoop in and grab it, and then all of a sudden they're very awake, and the baby is alive, and they're alive, and they save the day, right? There's something about that is just fun to watch, and there's something about that reminds me that I think we have instincts to care for those around us. It's when a baby cries for one of the first times in their lives, whether it's in a hospital or a home, and they hear the cry of another baby, they mimic it back. Some scientists make a compelling argument. It's about instinctual empathy. We're born with instincts to care for those around us. Now, it might be part of communal survival biology. Maybe it's slightly out of our own sense of potential fear or harm to ourselves. But by and large, I see people just noticing out of the corner of their eye, hearing something, that someone needs a little help. Someone needs a little reminder that there's goodness in the world. And then people show up. They spring into action, sometimes with just that moment's notice. And they try to help out in whatever way they can. Those are the moments when we spring into action and we suit up and we help save the day for each other in little simple ways, for someone somewhere, no matter how small it seems, because the little things in life are what matter the most some days. The people I love the best, writes the poet Marge Piercy, one of my favorite poems. She says, the people I love the best jump into work head first, without dallying in the shallows, and they swim off with sure strokes almost out of sight. They seem to become natives of that element. She says, I love the people who harness themselves in ox to a heavy cart, who strain in the mud and the muck to move things forward, to do what has to be done again and again. I want to be with those people who submerge in the task, who go into the fields to harvest and work in a row and pass the bags along, who are not parlor generals or field deserters, but move in a common rhythm when the food must come in or the fire be put out. The work of the world, she says, is as common as mud. Botched, it smears the hands and crumbles to dust. But the thing worth doing well has a shape that satisfies, clean and evident. Greek amphoras for wine or oil, Hopi vases that held corn, they're put in museums, but you know that they were made to be used. The pitcher cries for water to carry, and the person for work that is real. There is real, common, world-saving, life-saving work that happens all the time. It matters when we take the time to infuse whatever we do in our lives with meaning and purpose and love and possibility. Doesn't matter what you do, it matters how you do it. And I think we know that deep down somewhere, but we need reminders, at least I do. It matters what heart we bring to it, what grace or forgiveness or love or joy or hope we infuse into whatever it is in life. Because if it is done from a place that believes the little things in life matter a whole lot, then it matters. If we write an article or we smile at a stranger, it matters if we really listen to a patient or if we sing. It matters to make a really good cup of coffee or knit love into thread. It matters to notice how the sunlight comes through the morning trees or how to make an engine run again. It matters to keep learning and make the floor shine for the 1,000th time, to dot the I's and the T's and change the font, to send another email and answer another call, to plant a seed and knead the dough, to stuff an envelope, stock a shelf, start the conversation, to fold the sheet, hold the hand, wipe the nose, dry a tear. It all matters. To do it well and to fail at it sometimes and then to keep doing it again and again. If that happened, writes the poet, if we could have the superpower to let go of our need to control and say, I'm sorry, if we had the superpower to contort our mouths to say, I forgive you, or if we could treat each other with so much more kindness and compassion and dignity, if that happened, writes the poet, maybe we could all be saved. Similar to food and water in this world, or resources of any kind for the flourishing of humanity, I don't think there's a lack of resources. That's not the problem. The problem is distribution, as it were, in the business language, or in the ethical or spiritual realm. When it comes to the resources of love and compassion and justice, I don't think there's a lack of resources there. There's not a lack of potential, but sometimes in our fear or our sense of scarcity or a sense of self-centeredness as humanity, not as individuals, I'm not like, because you're self-centered and because you're, but as humanity, right? We have that capacity, that tendency to think of ourselves. I think we have a problem with acting on our instincts for empathy, our instincts for abundance, because we are always at odds with our other instincts, competing with fear and scarcity. We have fear and scarcity, and we have love and abundance. What are we choosing each day? We don't lack those resources to love our neighbors as ourselves, but sometimes maybe we lack the courage to act as if we are all kindred with all people and all of creation. We lack the fearlessness of superheroes of ourselves to believe that our small actions of planting seeds or holding a door or creating food or music or art matter. Any way you do that, any way you take the time to notice the miraculous in your midst, maybe those resources will come out a little easier. One way to do this is to name and honor the simple superheroes in our lives that we have experienced in some way, that we have witnessed. So I want you should have received a little card on your way in, a very fun, action-packed card. I want you to hold it. If you have a pen, you can grab one, but you don't need to if you don't. I want you to hold that card first right between your hands. And I want you to think of some superhero in your life. Someone who has made some amazing impact on your life or the world. someone you have seen show up to bring more beauty or love or justice into your life or the world, someone to you that is your hero. Someone alive, even though there are many who aren't alive that are your heroes, but you have to send them a card. So I want you to think about that. You can put their name on it if you want now. And before you leave church, make sure you write their name on it. And I would say and invite you into this spiritual practice sometime today. Try not to wait till after lunch or after your Sunday afternoon nap if you're like me. Try to write them a note that tells them why you think they're a superhero, that thanks them for how they've shown up for love or justice and made this world more beautiful some way. And all of a sudden, people will get these cards in the mail, and they'll be reminded that they have gifts and powers, that they have made this world more beautiful and made it shine. Remind them that what they do in this world saves the day. Maybe it's saved your own life from fear or despair. Maybe it's made someone's day to restore their hope, at least for now. We have to remind that we do that for each other, to remind each other we do that for each other. Universalism is our taproot from liberal Christianity, one that has always been rooted in the belief that we are all saved, that the whole world is saved. There's no fear of hell or eternal punishment, that there is some love ultimately at the core of the universe, which they, and some of you, call God or spirit or mystery, that will never let anything through the cracks into eternal suffering. That all living things, all creatures of earth and sky are good, have dignity, are beloved. All creatures, great and small, are held and embraced by some everlasting and eternal love. That our whole lives are saved in some way, not necessarily from pain or grief or the real and true experience of what it means to be human, but we are saved all the time from the teachings and beliefs that any one of us is less sacred or any less worthy or has less dignity or is any less beloved than anyone else. It saves our souls sometimes, and sometimes literally lives, to hear that simple message that you are sacred, you are welcome, you are broken and beloved and whole. So at the end of the day, love has the final answer. Wholeness is not an individual's thing to have, something that you attain or can keep for oneself. Wholeness is about the wholeness and health and flourishing of all of creation, all of humanity, all of the natural world. That there is a love in the family of all things that saves it from the flames of hell or from self-hatred or isolation or despair. In the words of Annie Dillard, who reminds us that we need to be the bearers of love in the world, she says, "There is no one but us. There is no one else to send, not a clean hand or a pure heart on the face of the earth, only us, unfit, not yet ready, having each of us chosen wrongly or made a false start, yielded to impulse and the tangled comfort of pleasures. We who have grown exhausted, unable to seek the thread, the weak, the uninvolved, but there is no one but us. There never has been." Friends, I want you to know that you are superheroes. You have superpowers. We all do. We have power and gifts to give to this world, to love, to give, to dream, to hope, to create, to plant, to share, to breathe, to be. Unfit? Sure. Not yet ready, made a false start, grown exhausted? That's okay. But suit up. To save the world, it takes all of us to remember that every creature of earth and sky holds the power to bring beauty and love into this world. The moment the world needs it most, for all of us to go out the doors in whatever capes or masks we have to bring these powers into the world, the moment the world needs it is always and forever, right now. I'm going to sing All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. invite you, as you're comfortable, to join a hand next to you. Place your hand over your heart. Breathe deep the breath of life. I know it may look like I'm the only one in the room with a cape, but you all have got them too. You have gifts and powers to bring into this world. We can't save everybody from everything, but sometimes we can offer an ice pack and a hug and be with one another. And sometimes that's all you need to save the day. May it be so. Amen.